I'd like to welcome everyone who's joined us this evening. This is the 11th in our series of talks, and it's the third one in the fourth part of the series that talks about the things that we do well, or the things that we do special, and that we want to share amongst the different communities. And our subject this evening is schools. Now, schools are central. The whole subject of Jewish continuity, there's no doubt that the ability to give our children good schooling is central to that. And yet it's harder as a Masorti Jew to do that than you might think. I can remember my own experience. It's already many years ago because my children are grown up. But when I first arrived at London, it was obvious that I wanted to put my children in Jewish schools. And school after school said that they didn't want the children of a heretic to attend their school. There were only Orthodox schools in London at the time. And we had to deal with one school after the other until eventually we got our children into schools. Today, the situation in London is different. We have a range of schools that you can choose from. And I was part of those battles to found the first non-Orthodox schools. But the question of where to send our children and how to give them an education that's compatible with what's happening in our synagogues is something that we share across the continent. And we're in a position where there are several schools that are either cross-communal schools or specifically Masorti schools that aim to serve the members of our communities. And today we're going to hear from three people who are involved in three of those schools to hear about the challenge of creating a cross-communal or a Masorti school and the challenges of providing Jewish education in the more liberal space in the Jewish community. And I'm looking forward to it. And I think that we have a lot to learn from really the pioneers who are doing kind of leading the first generation, usually the first generation of non-Orthodox schools in the various countries in Europe. So we'll go in a second. I want to remind people at the bottom of your screen, you have a button that says interpretation, where you get to choose a language that you want to listen in. And please choose one of those languages. We have English, French, and Spanish this evening. And even if you are listening in English and you don't need the translation, you should choose English because not all the speakers are in English, and you won't hear the translation from French if you haven't made a choice. So everyone should be in one of the channels and should, and that way they'll be able to hear everything. Right, so we are going to start now. And for our first speaker, I've asked Mark Schofrin, who's the head teacher of Alma Primary School in North London. And I'll add a longtime friend and acquaintance who has worked with us on several different things over the years. And we'd like to tell us, Mark, a little bit about Alma Primary School, how it was founded, and what kind of makes it unique and special as a cross-communal school. Thank you.
Thanks, Chaim, and Erev Tov, everyone. Good evening. I know lots of you are not native English speakers, so I'm going to try and slow down my normal speaking speed so that I don't make it too difficult. I think some of you are reading some simultaneous translation. So Chaim asked me to talk for a little bit about our school, a little bit about its history, its background. Alma is not a Masorti school, although we have a large number of Masorti families, and a number of the people who founded our school had association with the Masorti movement. We are an inclusive school, and we're what's called, hang on, There we go. We're a kind of a nearly new school. Our school started just over 8 years ago, in 2013, under a program in the UK where the government was encouraging community groups and organizations to begin new schools in order to create more capacity, more space for children in the community. A group of people from across the community, from Orthodox, Reform, Masorti affiliations and something now, came together to found our school, and I was fortunate to be invited to be the founding head teacher of the school. And we opened our doors in 2013 with our first class, and then we've spent the last 7 years building our school up. And we now have a full school. In fact, the COVID year in 2019 was the first point we'd reached a full school. And our first cohort of children who started with us graduated and left and went on to secondary school or high school in last summer. But I'm going to share some things about our school ethos, and what makes us special, our approach to Jewish learning. I've got a little video to show you. And I'm going to start with the words of the children. This was we have a school newspaper called Alma Matters, and just before the pandemic started, one of our children wrote this article about the school, about the fact that it had gone from 30 children to 210 children in 7 years. During that time, we created a lot of things. We founded, we have to create a lot of paperwork. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that concept. England does paperwork. And we also renovated what had been a police station. We recycled a police station and turned it into our school building. I often say to the children that some people recycle tin cans and bottles. We recycled a whole building. So you must get lots of recycling points for that. I hope the humor's kind of translating okay. For those of you it doesn't, sorry. So there's a little bit of the background of the school. There was, before I came on board, there was a great deal of discussion about whether it should be aligned to a particular movement. And the founders of the school agreed that what they wanted was a school that welcomed people from across the Jewish community and from beyond. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our school ethos, a little bit about the learning values and so on. Tahila, you said that the sound isn't great. I only have the built-in mic. Is that okay? Are we doing all right?
It's just been going in and out. If that's all you have, then we'll make do. But just it was going in and out a bit.
Right. I'm really sorry. I'll try and be as directional as possible.
Thank you.
Let me just close that. Okay, so a little bit about our learning ethos. So when I talk to prospective parents, I always start about talking about our focus on learning. And when parents are looking for a school in the UK, we know that the religious aspects of the school is one feature, but they're looking for a range of things. And people from the Jewish community and beyond are very keen to make sure that the children have high academic standards, that they're being stretched and challenged. The UK system, for those of you who know it, has its own vagaries and its own constraints. And we try to give children a broad and deep learning experience. And that's true on the range of aspects, including the Jewish learning that we do. Above all, we promote the idea of the school being a learning community, a community that learns together and that supports each other in learning and understanding in the best way we can. In terms of our Jewish values, we spend a lot of time thinking very carefully about how to frame and communicate the Jewish aspect of our school. And it's never I think, a completed discussion. It's never something that we've done and dusted and we're entirely satisfied with. the interrelationship between the Jewish life of the school and everything else around it, and the particular nuance of how we position and explain the Jewish values of the school are developing a dynamic aspect. They're not something that's just fixed, that we know, okay, this is what we teach when children are 6, this is what we teach them when they're 9, and that's never going to change. We each year review and think about how we are making sure that the Jewish experience, the Jewish learning we're giving children, and broader learning is vibrant and live. Tahila, will you just be my mic guide? And if the sound quality is dropping, will you let me know?
It's perfect now. Thank you.
Okay. So one of our key priorities is to promote deep engagement with Jewish values and Jewish texts. We want children to be engaged in a Jewish process. We don't want them to learn about what Judaism does, but we want them to be part of that Jewish process. So I teach some of our classes alongside one of my colleagues, Jeannie Horowitz, who's our Jewish learning leader. I'm teaching our year 5 children who are 9 and 10 at the moment, and we're teaching them the idea of machloket. And we've explored a number of different historical arguments, respectful disagreements. We started with Hillel and Shammai. We've also looked at Moshe and Korach, and today I was talking to them about the Baal Shem Tov and about the Vilna Gaon. And the idea of our teaching is not just to give them something external to know about, but to have experienced for themselves. So we're teaching them in a way that encourages them to engage in disagreement with one another in order to learn how to be part of a machloket, part of a respectful disagreement. Throughout the year, we run a number of different activities for Chagim and for other aspects of school life and for Jewish life to try and encourage children to help make those experiences meaningful. And I'll come back to some of those in just a moment. But we also teach alongside our Jewish learning. We teach Ivrit as a modern foreign language. We take it very seriously. Our children have around 4 lessons a week of Ivrit. I know that in European schools, it's typical that they do a lot more of Ivrit language. For the UK system, that's a huge amount of time because the constraints of the UK system expect us to do a lot of teaching of things like maths and English. And so we end up squeezing down, but our children get around 40 to 50 minutes of Hebrew 4 times a week. And what we're trying to do is to nurture both an understanding and a love of Ivrit. We want our children to leave our school with a sense of ownership of Ivrit, of being able to engage and to have a sense of purpose with it. I spoke a little earlier about our learning ethos, that we view ourselves as a learning community. We also have a strong emphasis on the idea of developing children's emotional literacy and nurturing each one of them. When, as educators, we get given children, we get given a gift, we get given a precious child, and part of our job, I believe, is to help to inspire and nurture and develop those children, to enable them to grow into the best they can be, and to go and improve the world. And so that's part of our emphasis on community. It's certainly been a challenge for the last 18 months, and I'm sure you've all experienced different degrees of that. But we've managed to find ways to maintain our community, whether they're through Zoom or through other things, and to use the strength of our community in order to combat the negative effects of the pandemic. I wanted to just give you a little bit of a flavor. Hearing me talk about the school isn't quite the same as seeing it for yourself. So I want to finish just by sharing some of the work that our children do around Jewish learning and our vision for our future for the school. So I'm going to come back to here. Apologies for the jumping around. So these are some examples of some of the work that our children do. I've chosen just a few classes. This is from work with children who are in year 2. And part of our job is to try and help them to understand the meaning of Jewish artifacts, Jewish dress, Jewish traditions, and to also understand that in the context of understanding the religious expressions of other communities, of other beliefs. So we teach them about all sorts of dress, and then we give them opportunities to create their own kippah and to try wearing it. Some children come from homes where they don't wear a kippah. Some come from homes where it's only traditional for a male or a boy to wear a kippah, and we want all of our children to have understood that experience. So this is a little bit of the work that we did around that, and you can see one of the kippot that the children made. We want them to be able to access that core part of Jewish tradition. So we teach them Tanakh, and when we're teaching Torah, we teach Torah with a little bit of Hebrew and English, but when we're teaching Tanakh, we mainly teach that in English. And then we try and get the children to respond and reflect on their own experience and understanding. These are some examples of a group of children in year 4, 8 and 9-year-olds, reflecting on the learning they've been doing about David HaMelech, King David. And we try and use technology creatively. So we were doing some work around Purim with our oldest children, and we used a strategy called Padlet to try and get them to comment and reflect online while we were doing this. Was during lockdown, and we were during one of our lockdowns, we wanted them to be able to comment. I'm going to finish just by talking about our vision for learning. We have a view that a school motto that comes from Tehillim, from Psalms, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, which we translate as a world built on kindness. And we want our children to grow up believing that they can make a difference to the world, that they can see the problems that exist in the world and go out and solve them. So we say that our vision for our children is that they're able to reach their full potential and embody a world built on kindness in all that they do. That isn't, I think, a uniquely Masorti vision. I think that is an integrated communal Jewish vision that I hope for our Masorti families, for the families that are trying to find a way to make Judaism work in the modern world, that is a motto that they can both be inspired by and help them to live. So I hope that's been a useful insight. Chaim, I think I'm probably went a little bit over time.
That's absolutely fine. I think before we go on, I just want to ask a couple of questions for clarification. Could you tell me a little bit what you do or don't do around tefillah, prayer? Is that part of the life of the school? And also, can you comment a little bit about girls and boys? I know that in traditional Jewish schools, they know what they want to teach the boys and they know what they want to teach the girls. How does that division play out at Alma?
Okay. So we have a range of families in our school, and we make very clear to all our families before they start that we make no difference for boys and girls. All our children do the same things. All of our children are given the opportunities. The only area we make a distinction is where families ask us, tell us they don't want a child to wear a kippah. We don't force that. And a lot of our families ask us not to give girls kippot, which we respect. However, we do expect all of them to take part in, to lead tefillot, to take part in all of the learning and studying that we're doing. So there is no separation for boys and girls in any way in any of those aspects of school life. We do regular tefillah. We do davening every single day in our school in some form. We do have dalah on Monday morning. That's a whole school activity. We then do shacharit on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We use a siddur that we wrote ourselves, and I'll put it up on screen in just a moment. And it's a siddur that reflects the diversity of different traditions in certainly in UK Judaism. So I'll show you an example of that in just a second. Sorry. So we and on Friday we do a Kabbalat Shabbat with our whole community. So there are frequent prayer opportunities in our school. We expect every child to take part of it, even the ones who the 11-year-olds who think they're too cool and don't need to. Most of our children enjoy prayer. We do a lot of singing and a lot of our tefillah is joyous. It's quite Hasidic in that way, in that it's quite engaging. We do full body activities for some things. But we also reflect the diversity of Jewish tradition. Our job, we often tell our children and our parents and our teachers, is not to judge the different Jewish traditions. It's not our job to tell parents how they should be living. We want our children to grow up understanding the beauty of diversity and difference. So you can see here that we've got different communities finish this prayer in different ways. And another example in the Siddur is here, where you're, oh, sorry, no, not that one. You'll see that we reflect some of the different minhagim within Masorti and Orthodox communities. For Morid Hatal, we say something different, Mashiv HaRuach or Morid Hatal. And in some liberal communities, the liberal Siddur in the UK has one phrase that it uses all year. So we try to help children to start to learn that there are different ways of being Jewish and to celebrate and enjoy those different ways of being Jewish and not to see them as threatening. Should I stop there, Chaim? Has that answered your questions?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. And we're going to move on. And I think we're moving from London to Paris. And Josie Webrot is the head teacher of the École Juive Moderne in Paris. And she's going to be telling us the history and what's special about that school. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation.
Thank you, Chaim, very much for the invitation. Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you this evening. So I am the founding director of the École Moderne Juive, the Jewish modern school, which was created 14 years ago. In September of 2007, we started our school, and well before the school opened, Rabbi Rivon Krigier, who was the rabbi of the Masorti synagogue Adat Shalom in the 15th arrondissement of Paris, he's the person who really thought about and elaborated this school. He got together with the liberal movement, which now call themselves Judaism in Movement, and the three communities together created this school, this day school. The idea behind this was that any family wanted a Jewish education for its children, whatever the practices of the family were. We would accept every form of Jewishness, any kind of practice, and for Paris, this was quite new. In France, this was brand new as an idea. Most of the Jewish schools in Paris are what she calls traditional, that is to say Orthodox and perhaps Hasidic or Chabad. But at my school, she says, we have all kinds of families and all forms of families. We have mixed marriages. We have those who are Orthodox, Shomer Shabbat. We believe we're committed to pluralism. Now, how do we manage to keep everyone together and live together? I myself grew up in a sort of Jewish scout movement in France that was that created in 23, created this idea of a minimum of practice. So it was a common minimum for everyone, all the kids. And we have adhered to this idea for our school. Concretely, in terms of Jewish study, how does this play out every day? Since we began, we have had at the heart of our learning modern Hebrew. Our staff is Israeli, and they're the people who teach modern Hebrew, studying the Hebrew Bible in Hebrew. The study of what we call dinim, the laws, etc., in modern Hebrew. So our students have 8 hours of Jewish study in Hebrew per week. Why modern Hebrew? Because for us, it's very important that the students understand the significance and meaning of what they're learning and their identity as Jews. So they have a lived experience of Judaism through the holidays, through the services, but also through language. When we come together, for example, in the Sukkah, when we come together, for example, in Rosh Hashanah Seder, or every week when we also have a Kabbalat Shabbat, it's a very important moment for all of the students. And when we study the biblical text, again, that's in modern Hebrew, and that way they make the link between modern Hebrew and the text of the Hebrew Bible. We use a Canadian method which makes the link specific, the correspondences, the links rather, between modern Hebrew and the Hebrew Bible very clear. We have students from the age of 3 to 11. So Kita He class, the 5th class, which is in France, where usually you then change school after 5th grade, I'm sorry, starting with 6th grade, you go to a junior high school or middle school. And we at the École Juive Moderne, this coming fall, we will have our very first class of 6th grade. And this is also the age of bar and bat mitzvah, so it's a very important year. We give both girls and boys access to the text, to the tamim. If the girls are going to have a bat mitzvah in a liberal or a Masorti congregation, they'll be able to read from the Torah, and that's very important when you're preparing your bat or bar mitzvah. So we're also working to help them develop their critical thinking. It's very important when we work with the Bible, with the Tanakh rather, to have a critical spirit, and we're working on helping them develop critical thinking in general and in relation to their Jewish studies. So another aspect that's quite important in our lived experience of the school is what we call informal education. So for example, the Jewish holidays, which are quite festive, we don't want to be dogmatic. We don't want to pass judgments on what different families do. We're not proselytizing. What we want to do is have a really great time together and celebrate in this positive way. It's very important not to be critical and judgmental, whether it's about kashrut, whether it's about what the siblings do, whatever it is. Really seek to be open to the world. We welcome all kinds of rabbis and congregations in our school to come together with us. For example, at Sukkot, we've had a female rabbi. We have had the chief rabbi of Paris, who is Orthodox. We really try to give the students the experience of that diversity of Judaism, and that they create their own individual Jewish identities from being exposed to the diversity of Judaism and Jews.
D'ouvrir les enfants sur différentes communautés. On peut aller vite.
We do try to expose our students to different congregations. So we take them, for example, to a prayer service at the Consistoire, which is the Orthodox communities, or we might go to Kabbalat Shabbat in a liberal congregation. We show them different sidurim so that they understand that there are differences and different possibilities in Judaism. We give a very large place, we spend a lot of time as well on culture. Every month we're outside of the school, we're visiting other places, because
aussi énormément à l'extérieur.
we consider that Jewish life does not begin and end, is not contained in a classroom. Your engagement, your commitment as a citizen also depends or is informed by your Jewish identity. For example, helping those who are in need, help delivering packages at Pesach, visiting people, older people, singing with them. We have various kinds of intergenerational projects, which are important as well.
Et de leur montrer que ça fait partie aussi de la construction de notre identité que de donner du temps.
In order to build our identities, it's important to be giving to those who are in need, we believe, and or even run errands for older people, because we want our students to be sensitive to the importance of sharing and to the importance of service to others. Our students have a very, very strong tie to Israel. Just before they leave our school, at the end of the years they spend at our school, they spend a week in Israel. They have a full Shabbat in Jerusalem. They run all over the country. They find out about new technologies. They find out about the history of the country. We discuss the immigration, the different waves of immigration and the populations, the different populations in Israel. We have a really strong tie to the state of Israel. And when they get there and they're in 5th grade, their language level is already quite good. And so, for example, when we go to the museums, the guides give their tours in Hebrew, and our students are all able to follow these tours. So the number of hours that we dedicate to Jewish studies, again, is 8 hours a week, of which 3 hours are language, more or less 2.5 hours to Chumash, and then about 2.5 hours for holidays, prayer, and lived Judaism. which,
c'est un moment important. On va
for example,
toute l'école, on
the
va faire une
new
prière
moon,
collective au moment
and
de
we
l'entrée des
celebrate
filles. On va
together.
essayer de ponctuer à différents moments du parcours des
And
rituels.
so
Au moment du
we
CP,
are,
on quitte à Aleph, quand les enfants rentrent au
we
CP,
try to
on va
have
leur remettre leur
specific moments that we
siddour, ils lisent leur
celebrate. So for
siddour.
example,
En
in
Kita B,
first
on va leur
grade, when
remettre
they
leur
get a
chumash
siddur, we have a
siddour.
ceremony and
Après,
activity
on
around getting your
on
first
essaye de
siddur.
ritualiser
When you
des
start
moments
reading Chumash, we have
dans
a
la vie
special
scolaire pendant la
ritual to
construction
celebrate that.
de leur
So
identité.
their year is, and their ages are marked by these Jewish
Donc ça,
events.
c'était pour la part de l'histoire, pour la part
So much for the history, so to speak, of our school and for our educational
Après, les
curriculum.
problématiques que l'on rencontre, puisque
What kind of problems do we run into, since you, Chaim, asked me that question?
La difficulté, je dirais, de notre projet, c'est d'arriver à
The most
faire
difficult
vivre
part of
ensemble
our
ces
project, I
différentes
would say,
judaïtés.
is
Alors,
how
c'est vrai
we
que,
combine together the
par
different
exemple,
Jewish
cette année,
practices,
on a
how that's
rencontré des
lived to have this
difficultés pour
diversity.
raconter un
For
petit peu.
example,
Les
this year,
familles qui sont Shomer Shabbat, Shomer
the
Kasher,
families
qui
that
font
were
partie des
Shomer
familles, je dirais, les
Shabbat
plus
and who
orthodoxes,
keep
modernes de
kosher,
l'école,
among the
à un
most
moment
modern
donné,
Orthodox, I would say, of our
ne
school,
plus se reconnaître dans notre projet. Donc,
sometimes
on
they
demande
are
davantage, vous voyez.
they
Donc,
are
on
not
doit toujours
seeing
jongler, en
themselves
fait,
in our project
avec ce
anymore.
pluralisme et ce
So
grand
the
écart
kind
qu'il
of
peut y avoir entre les
plurality has vast
différentes pratiques.
differences
En tout cas, au niveau
in
de la table, du
practice,
moment du repas, par
and
exemple,
it's
on fait les
important that
bénédictions
everyone feel
avant et après
recognized.
chaque repas, le Birkat Hamazon.
So
On
at
a,
our
les
group
enfants portent
meals,
la kippa
we have
lorsqu'ils font les
prayers.
bénédictions.
I mean,
Donc,
afterward, there's Birkat
ils
Hamazon,
peuvent,
grace after
lorsqu'ils
meals, and
sont
so
pris le
forth.
matin pour faire
Our
leur tfila,
students wear
ils portent
kippot
la kippa au moment
when
de
they
lecture
pray
du texte
in the
biblique. Donc, c'est
morning,
trois
and
moments
when we
où on a
study
décidé qu'on
the
portait la kippa.
Chumash,
On peut
that's when
avoir
we've decided that the
filles
kippah
aussi
must
où
be worn.
les parents demandent à ce que les filles portent la kippa. Ça, c'est tout à fait
If the
possible aussi.
families
Ça existe.
want their daughters to wear a
Si vous avez des
kippah, they
questions.
tell us and we let them. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Jesse. That was just wonderful. 1 second. Right, back to the English channel. Okay. I just wanted to ask you 2 questions, really, just to sharpen. I think you said at the beginning that the school was founded by 3 synagogues, by 2 liberal synagogues and 1 Masorti synagogues. And I'm interested in hearing whether that's ever a problem, whether there's tensions between the movements, and how hard is it for you to negotiate the different sponsoring synagogues. And my other question I want to ask you about the market in Paris for your kind of school. There are Lubavitch schools or Orthodox schools. There's only one school like your school. Do lots of people want this, or is there really not that many interested? What does the market look like?
Alors, pour la première question, c'est vrai que
As for the first question, it's true that the founding congregations, 2 liberal and 1 Masorti, at the beginning, the school was seen or known as a liberal school, and that was not easy for us. It made problems because in order to assemble the various communities,
c'était pas facile.
currents of Judaism movements that I talked about, it was really difficult. This idea of the Jewish scouts with their common minimum, that really helped us. That enabled us to get together. So the kashrut, for example, when we started this school, there was a debate about whether there should be 2 days for Yom Tov or not. The liberal congregations wanted us to open the school for the 2nd day of a Yom Tov. But I said, if the 2nd day of Yom Tov, the schools are open, then all the families that are more Orthodox won't send their kids to the school, or certainly won't be able to send their kids to that school the second day, and that's already a division that's unacceptable. So from the beginning, it was important that the project be inclusive. So that's the kind of question that we had to deal with. As for the second question, market study, it's true that in Paris, the schools are much
Que notre projet, il est
more
arrivé.
traditional, but it's Orthodox. And our vision came on the scene as something really novel. And now we realize that there's an enormous potential. Today, our waiting list is unbelievable. Lots of families are very interested in our project, in this vision of being open to the world. Our vision, our project is a viable alternative to a French public school. Because today these families wouldn't necessarily put their children, in fact, would never put their children in an Orthodox Jewish school. They would have put their kids, probably in maybe a bilingual school or some other fancy school or a public school. But instead, they get both of these worlds in our school. Because we are opening the world to our students.
Moi, j'ai une école, j'avais pendant 10 ans une école catholique.
For 10 years, there was a Catholic school across from our school, and we did a lot of together. We partnered up so that, for example, we would go there for Christmas and we would come here for Hanukkah. So we profited from our neighbors, with our neighbors.
Thank you very much. And we need to move on now because time is moving. And I want to welcome Jonathan Marcus from the Masorti School in Berlin. I want to thank you, Jonathan. You came on at the last minute. The head teacher had to, for personal family reasons, at the last minute couldn't participate. And Jonathan, you're in charge of the operations at the school, but you've been a founder. You've been there from the very beginning. And I look forward to hearing about the Masorti School in Berlin and tell us how unique and how special it is.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Chaim, for having me, and also for my predecessors for giving insights into their schools, because it's very inspiring to hear where different schools already are. Since our school is also a new school, relatively new, or we are now in our third year, and we created the school in kind of a record time. Within a year of the first idea, when parents approached, came together and said, we want a Masorti school here in Berlin. We need that. Masorti was able to put this school into existence, and since then we are continuously growing it. I'm now also zooming from one of the rooms in that in the building that we have found, and since then have been incrementally growing to become more and more of the Masorti school. And the reason why the parents approached, or why there was this drive for having this Masorti school, is that in recent years there has been a growth in differentiation, so to speak, of Jewish schools in Germany. There's, first of all, there's been a change in the community's growth with immigration from the former Soviet Union, about 30 years ago, basically, which was already a first push to create more Jewish institutions in general, build more schools and also high schools, because there was suddenly a need for Jewish education and institutions. But as things go, often these kind of established institutions connected to established communities often also become dominated by Orthodox streams, and also have their own kind of dynamic. And Masorti has for many years now already run successfully several kindergartens in Berlin. And parents from that kindergarten who experienced Masorti and the way Jewish life and Masorti Judaism is practiced in the everyday life in those institutions, realized that they also wanted to have that as part of school life. And that was the driving idea and driving force to establish Masorti School, and responding to an outgrowth, so to speak, of what's already established in the kindergarten area. And there's also in today Germany, the phase in the Jewish community is that we see people from all over the world coming to Germany, and especially to Berlin. It's not anymore the Jews from the Soviet Union that come here for various reasons, but it's really Jews from all over the world, from Israel, but also South America and the US. And they often come specifically to Berlin because Berlin is one of the most, in the Jewish sense, is one of the most diverse places to be. And they are looking for a Jewish space where you can have a Jewish education for your children, which at the same time is traditional, but also modern and open and inclusive. And this is the right moment for Masorti to throw its experience, its tradition, its approach into the landscape of Jewish education also here in Berlin. And that's why the school is part of that, and this project is ongoing. And therefore we also have, as part of the school's curriculum, as was mentioned before, also the traditional Jewish subjects that you have. And we of course also have to comply with the requirements for the subjects, so math, German, and sciences, and have their fixed spot in the curriculum. But then of course we add, in addition to that, Hebrew, Jewish studies, and that also differentiated between grade 1 and grade 6. The school right now has all 6 grades, which are the primary grades in Germany. And here we also center a lot on the language that we teach, that we use during the classes. So it's German, but also Hebrew, because we see that there's a strong Israeli community here in Berlin, and they're looking also for a place to introduce their children into the educational system here in Germany, which is part of, which then is as a first step to coming here. And therefore, of course, language is a facilitator, but it might also be a barrier for them in other schools. And this is where we find ourselves also responding to. And so it's been already several 3 years of continuously growing, finding ways, developing ideas, going back once from other things and finding new pathways to some other ways. And there's always new things to discover. And this is where we are right now with our school. And unfortunately, I'm not prepared to have to show you anything like from our school day, everyday life, and so I would want to, but we are seeing also this school project for Masorti in Germany as one of the key projects, and then next to many of the other institutions we have in Masorti Judaism in Germany. But it's one of the new cornerstones, so to speak, to also show people that, yeah, and put the idea of Masorti Judaism into life, into practice. And for example, then also in school life, of course, the Jewish holidays, but also prayers like and Shabbat are celebrated in the way and in the time that they are celebrated, and are becoming a normal part of school life, and of course also in a inclusive and egalitarian way. So also no differentiation between men and women or anybody. Everybody is able to lead and able to explore also their Judaism in this school and as they wish.
Thank you very much. I also want to ask you some questions. This is the only one of the schools that's defined itself as a Masorti school. The others are cross-communal schools. And I was interested in kind of some of the implications of that. So it's obvious to me that children of parents who go to Masorti synagogues would be interested in sending their children to a school like this. I'm interested in learning or hearing from you if the if it also works in the other direction. Is the school something that perhaps people get introduced to Masorti Judaism through the school and then find a Masorti community? Is the school a means of recruiting people into the wider Masorti school? And you probably can answer also whether the kindergartens also have that function. The Masorti synagogue kindergartens have been around for much longer in Berlin than the schools have. And also, if you could comment on relationships with parents. I've asked some of the previous speakers about how movements try to pressure the school to maybe do one thing or another thing. I don't believe that Jewish parents are quiet. I'm sure that they have expectations of what they want to see in a school. And do you feel pressures to perhaps have more Israel, less Israel, more tefillah, less tefillah, more mathematics and less Judaism? I'm interested in kind of the conversations that take place and the expectations of parents in the school.
Yeah, very interesting questions, also very key questions. As we saw and we see in the kindergarten, also in the school, building community, a sense of mutual belonging is what makes these institutions function and puts them into life. And that develops, and that's the key for people to come together and build the Jewish lives also as part of the community life. We've seen this also, especially in the last year and a half, where in the schools and in the kindergarten, with the obvious, for the obvious reasons and the restrictions we had, that sense of coming together was interrupted. And once, for example, the school started to open, there was this question, or when the teaching was done online, is there enough Hebrew? Is there enough Jewish studies? Is there enough German studies and mathematics? And what do you squeeze into the small amount of time you're having the kids back in school? And so that's ongoing right now, but at the same time, it's coming. There's outside pressure from the pandemic and the situation on that. But of course, Jewish parents, and parents in the school, they want the best for their kids, and they will, and that's what shows how also engaged they are, and giving feedback and expecting things from the school, seeing how things are going, and is part of when we are building the school to grow with them into the right direction.
Thank you very much. We're coming up to the end of our time, and I'm just wondering if anyone has a question from the participant. Maybe put it in the chat if you have a question that you want to ask one of our speakers, and okay. I'll give 2 minutes. I have to say, for me, this evening was very exciting, because I've been around in the Masorti space for a very long time, and I've been here in London with the Masorti movement for almost 30 years, and before that I was in Israel, and to see us expand into so many new areas is so exciting for me, and it's clear to me that we live our lives in all kinds of different areas, and schools is one of those areas, and schools are central to the life of young families who one of the things they care about most is the kind of schooling that their children receive. And there's no doubt for me that the success of our movement lies in our ability to answer those needs of our parents, their wish to educate their children, and their wish that the school that they send their children to complements the spiritual space that they occupy in the synagogue, but also in their homes, in their families. And our ability to expand beyond the walls of our synagogues and to reach the area of the schools as it was the youth movement that we spoke about last time, is central to kind of our vision for growing in the coming years. I'm also aware that the world is changing around us very quickly, and with the pandemic and with all of the changes that are coming about, the way people construct their Jewish lives is changing very fundamentally. And I don't know what shape our synagogues are going to take in the coming generation and then in the coming years. But I'm sure that people are going to organize their Jewish lives differently. And I'm sure that one of the foundations of those Jewish lives are going to be the schools. So I want to take the opportunity to thank our speakers who shared with us today 3 models of open schools, of schools based on liberal values, on Masorti values. And it's such an exciting space. And I hope to be coming back and to see how it expands. I'm sure in Paris they're already talking about moving up to the older age children, and London, in London, that's something that happened not that long ago, that we had our first cross-communal school that was also a high school for the older children. And indeed in Berlin, when moving from the nursery schools to the primary school, is also that moving up, and is part of our success and our growth, and something that we can be very proud of. So I want to thank everyone who is here with us this evening. And I want to invite everyone to join us in 2 weeks' time, when we're going to have the last of this series. And we're going to be talking about perhaps the most difficult age group for any community to address, and that's the young adults. The people who either are at university or finish university and go out and are setting up their lives, their lives as independent adults. And many of them don't find their place in our synagogues and in our communities. I'll go further. Many of them don't find their place in any synagogue or in any community. And that is the #1 challenge facing Jewish communities today. So in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be speaking with people from Marom Europe and Marom Olami, which is the part of the Masorti movement that deals with the young adults. And we'll be hearing about the activities that they do and the work that they do to work with a challenging but a very important segment of the Jewish community, and one that holds in its hands another key to our future. So thank you for being with us this evening, and I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time when we have the final part of this series. Shalom, and you can unmute and say goodbye if you want.